be here all day. I love this.
Fantastic. You're welcome to stay all day, my darling.
This is a really nice location. I just want to see more of it. I want to see the metalwork, the wood, and the paint and everything about it. It's a really pretty location. Got a good connection with the person in. I'm wondering why the author's left the right hand out, and it pose looks a little bit unnatural. I think a strong pose here and leaning in, crossing the arms, I think really would have benefited this image. I think there's a little bit of burning in, we just said it literally 5 seconds ago, on the left arm coming down. You can see the hand's gone very blue compared to the face, and that's, as again we just mentioned it, a result of overburning. I think a looser crop here, and I think a nice black and white probably would have come up with score category.
Yeah, I agree with Scott. And if you know, a little bit more context would have helped this image. I think losing that right arm in such a dark shadow is kind of distracting for me. And because we've lost that arm in such a dark shadow, now the ear is really popping out. And I think it's a little bit to do with just the posing and the use of the light here. If you're going to only have the one light and it's coming from the front, you have nothing behind, you've got to be very careful that certain things aren't just disappearing into a black abyss as we have around the hair. I think if you took the camera more to the left and had him turn towards that light a little more, and then because his face turns, we lose that bright ear, we take that distraction away, and have him lean a little bit more out, because when I look at the TV, I can actually see there's a little bit of light in that background. So I think if you just with your print, the print's a bit heavy-handed and it is a bit cold. You know, in the background, you can just see his right arm. You can see it there. So, you know, maybe bring his arm out if it's possible. Get both hands out there. Make sure that where we're being drawn to is part of the story you want us to look at. At the moment, the front arm's a little bit strong, the ear's jumping out, we lose the other arm, and the hair and the shoulders just disappearing into deep black on your print. But your file has information, and it's a lot softer. It's not as contrasty, and I think it works better than the print. So this is where it's really important to understand having a good shot on file still has to be translated to print. Hence the importance of print copy.
So I'm so trained not to look at the screen that I didn't at all. So when I got up close to look at this, I didn't realize that there's some background in there. I thought it was banding on the print, because when you get up close to the print, it looks like banding. And so until you mentioned there's some detail and I looked at the screen. So yeah, be really careful in your printing, because as judges, we're trained not to look at that screen and make a judgment on that. We're taught to judge this, and there's things that exist here that fell apart in the print. So be really careful about that.
Just adding on to what the judges have said, looking at this gentleman, very striking, beautiful catch lights in his eyes. You can tell that the author taken a few steps back and had the gentleman leaning more out of it, to create a better story. And also that you can tell that there's a metal fencing on both sides surrounding this window. So I'm seeing a bit of a darker blue. It could be a vignette that was overly used on the right hand side. If that was corrected, it would really would have elevated this image.
I want to dive in here as well. Just to comment, this screen is really bright. On my calibrated monitor, it looks black. So I think it's an edit as well as a print base. And just a little note on lighting. I think flash has been used here, but it's a bit low. That shadow on the nose is going horizontally, and that looks wrong to our brain. So we're used to seeing light always falling down and across. So the shadow on the nose should always be falling downwards. So whether it's window light, sometimes the window is placed too low, or but here I think it's flash. So all you need to do is make sure that you're lifting that. And also another thing judges look out for as well is skin tones. So Michelle, are you on? No worries. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Judges look at skin tones a lot. So any magenta ears, fingers, or knuckles are going to be picked up on. Thank you, darling. And the skin tone, if there's any shift in skin tone, it doesn't mean that skin always has to be perfect, but if there are magenta areas, they need to be there for a reason. And here, obviously, they're not, so that needs to be dealt with.
Is everyone having fun? Does anyone have any questions? Can everyone see through my big fat head? Well, my butt when I leave it to the print. Go ahead.
Does it bother you guys that the generation looking backwards and you can see the distortion of perspective? Does that bother you as a judge?
Architecture. I mean, for me, I like to shoot a lot of architecture, so if I can straighten a vertical, then I will. But then the author's probably done it for a reason. So we're just subjectively looking at the image that's been presented in front of us. And yeah, you know, I personally would like to see it straight, but if it's not, I can deal with that. It's, yeah. No.
Yeah. All right, goodbye to Judge. He needs to go and do another commitment.
Good question.
And thank you ever so much. Next print, please.
No kids, Judge.
Overall, I think the print quality on this image is really quite nice. I think it's a good choice of paper. I like the way it's been presented. I love the colour palette. I think it's working really well. I wonder if, for me, when I look at this image, the top half of the picture is really posed quite nicely, but the bottom half of the picture I don't think is being dealt with as well. I think there's too much weight, and I don't mean weight in the model, I mean weight in the image, at the bottom of the image. And the way the dress is laid, we're getting drawn to the inside of the leg, which is quite bright compared to the other parts of the picture, apart from the face. And then we've got this big, large area of cloth, which I don't know that's actually flattering the subject. So maybe turning her a little more towards us in terms of her from her waist would help this image a little bit. And because that elbow is so strong and it brings us down, we keep getting brought back to this part of the image. And I want to be taken more to the face, which that other hand, which is up high, is beautifully done. That's lovely. I love the way that's done. The definition of the hair, so there's beautiful detail. The file quality that I'm seeing from here is certainly of a very good level. But I feel like that posing at the bottom, and even the black stool or seat or something, it's all distracting down the bottom, and I don't even know that you need it if you're bringing through the beauty of this woman. If it's about the dress, then I'd probably want to see a little bit more of the dress. So it sort of feels like it's in between for me. What about you, Scott?
I completely agree with what you've said here. I just have to say, I think the level of skin retouching on the print has been done very, very nicely. It's a beautiful retouch on the skin. It looks natural without being looked too. I see a lot of newborn photographers and portrait photographers overworking the skin way too much. It just loses all natural look. This has been done very, very nicely. For me, a slight attention to detail. There's a cloning issue on the left of the elbow here. If you take a closer look, it's like the author has just clipped something. And I looked at it and I thought, oh, it's a mark on the print. Oh well. I looked at it again and I thought, oh, there's something happened here. And that for me would be enough to not level it up into that score category of 80 and above. No matter how much this is all good, it's a little attention to detail there that would, and I hate scoring 79. I did 79 on that print.
I was waiting for you to pick up on the cloning thing. Also, I have a question for you, judges. Would you imagine, let's say, more negative space around the subject would have helped? or do you think that this crop works just fine with this subject?
Well, my comment earlier was that I felt that the top sort of in here works really well, and I'm struggling. I think that's kind of needs a bit of work. So in answer to your question, with her gazing at me, I feel like there's a little bit too much on the outside. However, if her pose and her face was turned slightly more towards our right, and she was looking back into the picture, I think then we can get a little bit more use out of that negative space. But still, the bottom of the dress, that's a large area that we're being drawn to, where the dress has no styling in it. And we can use that dress with a little bit more flow and a bit more lines to soften her lines and be more flattering on this beautiful woman. And that will then lead us up into her face, where the light in her face is doing all the work.
Meanwhile, let's welcome our judge, the third one in line for this hour, JVS. Thank you for coming. So some of you that spent the day yesterday here already met him. Scotty, are you leaving?
I'm off now for 1 o'clock at 12.
All right, great. See you later. Thank you, buddy. Okay, so would you like to say something about this sprint?
Actually, would you like to think of it?
Oh, all right. Okay, so let's move. Sarah, let's move to the next sprint.
I have a question about this sprint. Do you think that shooting from like a little bit more higher above would be far more flattering for her?
Just in case, what's your name? Just in case you didn't hear, look at a future judge, because she just picked up something that I hadn't picked up. And the minute you said it, I would agree with you. And that's why in a judging panel you don't have one person. Someone will see something. And you're right, I think if you did that, you would also remove some of that issues around the heaviness at the bottom, and you would start to put a little bit more focus on your face. So we'll say no, yeah? I agree with you.
And if I was on the panel, I would argue with that and say the problem with shooting down is that you make women in particular look weak. It's much more flattering, so because you're making them look slimmer and their eyes bigger, but she's looking very powerful. So when you shoot from a slightly, I wouldn't say low position, but at least waist high, so mid-frame, you're giving them a more powerful look. So you need to choose what it is you want. Do you want to flatter them, or do you want to make them look powerful? And that's up to you as the author.
Yeah. So what Sarah was saying is that an extreme height could cause that, but you have to decide yourself, do you want to look up her nostril or not?
Yeah.
And there's a very fine line. This could be like 6 inches above, where we see less of her nostril, and that might even it out a little bit, but yeah, shooting down on from above, unless they specifically ask for it, I would never do it. Yeah.
It's that I know it's a technique used in female photography to flatter, and it's beautiful. It makes the subject look much more attractive, but you just need to be aware that it does weaken the subject slightly if it's too high. Exactly. JVS is right.
I agree with Marianne, and what I love about the judging is this, because I would say to Sarah that while I agree with everything you said, the fact that she's wearing a beautiful glitzy dress is telling me she wants to look beautiful. If she was in a suit or wearing something like yourself, that made it more about, you know, it's not about the beauty, it's more about the strength, then I would agree to be careful about what you do there. So, yeah, I still tend to think that I would go up a little, but certainly not to the point where you're overdoing the flattering bit and reducing the strength.
One last word. From a technical standpoint, if you talk to your lab, if you submit this print, when you have limbs, hands, feet, details, flowers, whatever is meaningful to the composition, pay attention to this, not the cloning, but the fact that there is such a small negative space that once mounted on a mat like this will inevitably, you know, eat a little bit more of your print. You can see the file, it was already closed. By the time it goes mounted on a mat, it will be even closer and probably less, let's say, less interesting for the author and the subject. So pay attention to that. Just leave the bleed around enough for your lab of choice to mount it.
I would love to hear Sarah maybe talk a little bit about the retouch from here. The face looks amazing, like maybe they're your student. But I'd love to hear a little feedback on that.
On this particular
Did we score this? Probably we didn't score yet.
With so the good thing about this is that you can see the texture of the skin, which is really important. You don't want to be adding a filter that smooths the skin to oblivion, and that hasn't been done here. However, the print looks a little bit saturated to me. Just a little bit, so that would be my feedback on that.
All right.
Next print?
On that, what's your opinion when printing for competition and understanding the effects of these lights? Because it is different to printing for a client.
Yes, absolutely. So where you are...
11:16.
So what a lot of people don't understand is that people tend to complain that their prints come out dark. And that happens for a variety of reasons, which Dario and I often talk about in our classes. And a lot of that is the misunderstanding, the lack of understanding on the type of media. So a print is reflecting the light that is put onto it, whereas what we're used to seeing on a screen is backlit. So you are never going to have the two things look the same. Your print is always going to look darker. So when you're printing for a client, unless they have a gallery spotlight, which you, by the way, should be recommending to them, because if you go into an art gallery, all of those paintings have picture lights. The same should be for your artwork. Whereas they tend to be hung in a dark corner of the room, and then they complain that the print is too dark. The print is not too dark, it just hasn't been lit. However, when we are viewing in a light booth, we have optimal viewing conditions, and that means that whereas maybe if you were printing for a client in a dark corner, you might lift it a little bit, you might lift that print, you can actually be quite comfortable in keeping the image looking a little bit there. Bring it all the way from the, that's it there. Okay, so now, right, you would say, oh, my print has come out dark, okay? You'd be complaining to your lab, my prints aren't coming out right. So for competition, what I do is I take I don't have these viewers, they're very expensive. What I do instead is I either use an ice light, which is a great alternative, or I put my print on the floor in front of an open window, so a door window, and I not direct light, but that covered shadow light is pretty similar to this, and that's what I view my print competition work. Is that right, Tony?
So like a north side window.
You don't want to take it out of the sun because the sun's too bright. So you should have that clear light.
By the way, welcome to JVS, everybody. You just stepped on the panel. We've got judges just stepping off and stepping on throughout the day.
Right outside.
So is the author here? Yes, no?
You have the author here?
Yep. Cool. This is like, it's pretty awesome. I never really do this. Or I can actually talk to you about your prints in front of you, so that's pretty cool. So, right off the bat, it has impact. So we're looking at scoring things we need to know. Okay, alright, you got me. Okay, now I'm going to start looking deeper and deeper into this print. I can tell you right off the bat, you don't have a really good highlight. In other words, white people feel the need to bring that white to kind of level out things, make things a little more even. But his skin just feels a little too gray. And if you were to open this in Photoshop, I'll show you, I guarantee you that or more than a highlight. Makes sense? So you could probably pull highlight 20 points to the right before you even touch the beginning of your history. It would just give more punch. The posing is done very well. Hands are really great. You see how you're trying to vignette us into shots. But yeah, this is like one Morpheus that I can appreciate because I don't know when it was shot. I don't care when it was shot. I have a lot of clients that hire me because for some reason I shoot focus, and I go over cameras. So, you know, from a client's perspective, you know, whoever this might be, I think they're being rewarded with the fact that you didn't do whatever was current to make it. I just think it has a very nice feel to it. I like the way the feather is off the edge of the frame. Again, just a little nitpicky things would be highlights. I just feel like a little more punch. Also because of the intricate detail in his jacket, it might look better like on a marine paper. Something that had a little bit of a sheen to it. Because that's when all that detail's going to come out. I'm not looking at screen or digital. But no, I think, you know, what do you think this would fall on study? A range. Yep. Yep. So we're like silver percentage. Yep. And what's really cool is that if you usually go like 87, 88, 89, that's better print. A lot of people who enter the print competition forget the first two words of the competition. Print competition. We've seen some amazing images that were just not produced. I like the size of it. I still think, you know, you have to make the piece 10 inch here. No shorter than 10, no shorter than 40. But yeah, this is probably has that 85 inch, but you're approaching more highlights than
I think JBS covered that really well. What do you reckon? I think the comment about the finessing, the little details, just around the feather, there's a couple of little flyaways that are a bit distracting, so just be careful when you do. I think there's one element there that you touched that just went a little bit soft on the edge, so just check that out. But we're being super nitpicky because we're talking about something that I would give 87, that if you want to go into a gold range, then all that's holding you back here is printing. Now I'm doing this without any payment yet. Get on board with this Love Edits thing and watch how she does this job. Watch what these guys do with editing an image, because the editing and the print is the final expression of your vision. It's hard enough to get people in there, set your lights up, find the right space, go through all the technical stress. Then you've got this beautiful file to let it fall down because you haven't edited it to its full maximum potential, and then you haven't expressed it in a physical sense on paper to its maximum potential, particularly keeping in mind its outcome or where it's going. It's going on a client's wall, as Sarah said. There's one set of parameters. If you're going in a competition, there's another, because you've done all the hard work here. That's a really nice image. It's a lovely concept. It reflects on paintings from, you know, a couple of centuries ago. I can see all of that coming through. I love the expression. I love almost the audacity in his face. But I think, as JBS said, we want to have a little bit of sparkle. He's got that sort of top. I agree with you on something like a satin paper that's going to bring out the whites would be beautiful, just to pop it a bit, as long as that shirt doesn't overtake the face. But Love Edits, that's what they're about, is taking things and taking them to their full potential.
Okay, so you got this in the camera, right? And I've learned that you don't walk away from it, you come back to it. You don't think you got it. You know what it is? You know how exciting it is to